Hello, everyone joining in Zoom or LinkedIn. We are starting one more demo roundups. Today, we'll be talking about digital operations resiliency. My name is Shanda. I'm a community program manager at PagerDuty. And here with me today, we have a very special guest, Chris Duke. He's a DevSecOps at BT Group. And we'll be talking more how PagerDuty is his organizations ally to prepare for outage readiness. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining. You want to say a quick hello?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me today. Looking forward to talking about digital resiliency. So, yeah, looking forward to some questions.
Nice. Yes, thanks, Chris. Also with me, I have the Solutions Consultants Tesh Ruparell and Nick Castle, who will be giving an overview of the digital operations resiliency solutions, and also responding to any of your questions. We're really excited for this session. But before we go to the real talk, I want to share a couple of announcements because these demo roundups are a series, and the next one will be on automation standardization, and we will have Asif Ahmad and Justin Roberts, solutions consultants at PagerDuty, talking about all the ways that you can use runbook automation to save your workflows. And of course, join us. You can sign up. The link is in the screen, but I'll also be dropping the links in the chat later. You can also use the QR code. And then other events coming up. If you are in the US, in the West Coast, PagerDuty will be at Dreamforce from 17th to the 19th of September. We have our own lodge. It will be really fun. Stop by if you happen to be in San Francisco to talk with our experts about digital operations and real-time operations. And I'll talk a little bit about the community since we're here. We really want to hear from you. We want to know your stories, how you're using the PagerDuty products, what you're doing with it. Just share your success, okay? Just go out there, let us know. You can be featured in social media. And then we can continue the conversation at PagerDuty Commons, which is your new resources at one place. Online Hub is the new community, rebranded. We have so many fun stuff there. Go ask your questions, go find your answers, go get inspired with other PagerDuty experts and users. And then we'll have a big launch next week, but you can already join the community and be part of the talk. Let's continue the conversation there.
Hi everyone, I'm Tesh. I'm a senior solutions consultant at PagerDuty. I'm based in London, and today I'll be speaking with Chris, who I've had the pleasure of working with for the past year. Chris from BT. Chris, I'd love if you could introduce yourself, tell me a bit more about your role and what your team is responsible for.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tesh. Yes, I'm Chris. I work for BT, have done for a couple of years now in this particular role. My role is the DevSecOps Coach, which kind of entails looking after and providing best practices to our engineers in the business area of BT, ensuring that they understand what best practices are across DevSecOps, so SRE, CI/CD, and security mainly, and providing regular reviews with our teams and making sure that if there's any kind of knowledge gaps, we provide the sources and I guess workshops to bring everybody up to a really good skill set.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. And we'll just dive into a bit of a conversation around outage readiness. So it'd be great if you can tell us what you're doing at BT at the moment to ensure and enhance your protection against outage readiness.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we use PagerDuty and like process automation together for this really importantly. So all of our incidents in BT Business go through into PagerDuty, which are handled by a blend of automation and any sort of thing that falls outside of that goes to an on-call engineer. We use like incident workflows within PagerDuty for really high priority problems. And that allows us to be really specific about how we want to deal and communicate with customers internally and externally, I guess, depending on the nature of the issue. And the incident workflows really allow us to tailor our incidents per service as well. So yeah, we use that quite a lot. There's so many different PagerDuty resources that we do use, but that's probably one of the key ones that we use really. I wanted to point out.
The new advanced incident workflows are really great, aren't they? At just automating those manual tasks to make sure that all of those important actions that need to be done during an incident do actually get done. What sort of criteria is BT tracking to enhance their outage readiness?
We mainly track mean time to acknowledgement, so MTTA, and mean time to repair, so MTTR. They're our main kind of measures at the moment. We send weekly reports out to our engineering managers as well, so that we can keep a real track of how each individual team is performing against those metrics as well. And I guess going back to when I explained about what our team does and what my role is, if we start to see increases in MTTA and MTTR for particular teams, then we're there to sort of help them and understand why they've increased. There could be knowledge gaps, there could just be a really good reason for it, but we'd like to try and, I guess, keep our foot on and understanding why those have increased as well. But yeah, it's all backed on comprehensive monitoring, really. That's kind of the main kind of backbone to it. So yeah, they're the two big measures that we're going for, and thankfully, actually, PagerDuty's weekly email that we get around analytics really helps us understand how we are trending, not just in ourselves, but against other businesses that are similar size to us as well. So it really gives us a good idea of actually how are we performing, which is great.
There are some really valuable insights in those reports, especially the new advanced analytics that come out. That's great. How well do different teams within your organization collaborate during P1 incidents, or especially outages? And what are some of the most common challenges or bottlenecks in the coordination process?
Yeah, it's always a really difficult question to answer this, because a lot of teams work in so many different ways when it comes to P1s. I've worked in places before where everybody gathers into what they call a war room. Other places have kind of left the engineers to it. So trying to find the sweet spot can be really tricky. In BT, we work as lean as possible when it comes to responding to P1 incidents specifically. And when I mean lean, I mean that we have automation that, like I say, around incident workflows that sets everything up. So, in terms of like conference calls, bridge calls, we have automation that tries to set the engineer up for success from being called out. So, automation that goes and checks third-party services to see if they have any sort of input into why we might be having an issue. And when you really surface exactly to the engineer where the problem could sit, then that really puts the power in the hands of the engineer, really. And I think that's great, especially when you're getting up at any time in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, for example. You want information presented to you, so then you can now take appropriate action. So yeah, that's the main thing, really. And I guess when it comes to like calibrating together, we do have different teams that I guess own different things that other teams rely on. So we do have different escalation policies within PagerDuty, which just makes it really easy for us to say, okay, we need Team B to come and join us on this because it looks like this could be caused by an issue with their database. So you can just find them on the escalation policy, press a button, and it just pulls the person in on call. And it just saves us a lot of time trying to figure out who's on call and who is the correct person on that team that we should be contacting. PagerDuty kind of makes that process a lot easier for us.
Thank you. That collaboration piece can be so important during P1s and that bridging that communication gap as well, and making sure the right person can be found. But I liked what you said about giving the engineer the right information as soon as they get to the incident so they can resolve it as quickly as possible. What are some efficient opportunities, do you think, to automate incident response processes and orchestrate workflows to minimize the manual intervention during P1s? We know that you're a big fan of our incident workflows. What are some of the ways that you're using incident workflows today, or any kind of automation to automate the manual steps during P1s?
Yeah, good question. So in our area of BT, we're currently in the process of building out automation that, like I said before, I guess in the previous question, that really rules out external dependencies as being a factor in any of our incidents. So, for example, we're building out a suite of automation that would run against any incident that comes into PagerDuty. And that would run against things like our cloud providers, any other like third-party service that's outside of our control. So we'll check their service statuses and all this kind of thing. It'll automatically check through some of our shared email boxes as well to see if we've had any notifications from them. So really, like I say, we're really going automation heavy, really. And by the time the engineers kind of acknowledge the incident, we want them to know the incident's been, has been caused by something outside of our control or not. And if the issue is caused by a third party, we can start really then to understand, okay, how do we mitigate this? How do we minimize that impact and take action to communicate with our customers, both internally, could be internal tools. And we do have some areas of the business which do rely on external areas as well. Thinking more sort of TV channels and things like that. We really need to get to grips and speak to them really, really quickly. Obviously, the best case scenario is something really does go wrong and it's the middle of the night. We're not there in the middle of the night to start doing long-term fixes. We're there to get things back up as quickly as we can. So preferably if we can switch site, region, or cloud provider, then great. And that's where automation comes in. We really want engineers to be able to say, okay, this looks, potentially really bad. I know that switching this over, running this script is most likely going to resolve that problem. And that's where we really want to get to, providing engineers with a really easy and simple means to get the service back up and running and get back to bed.
Of course, especially for all the services that you provide for all of us here in the UK, and everything from our broadband to our TV, we rely on BT to help us out. So thank you so much. And it is crucial that your engineers can focus on important tasks and leave those manual steps behind. But I do, and we've spoken about this, Chris, about getting your engineers to the point that you can actually start to automate the diagnostics and the remediation of those incidents as well. We spoke a little bit about the engineering reports that you create, where you track the metrics, MTTR, MTTA, and you track how you're performing against each incident. A bit more about how do you run your post-incident reviews today, especially of any outages, to identify areas for improvement in your incident management process?
Yeah, so our post-mortems, or we call them post-incident reviews, they're probably one of the most important parts, actually, as soon as that incident has been resolved. Part of our kind of PIRs, as I call them, we use the timeline provided by PagerDuty to understand whether or not our internal incident management process has been followed. So if you haven't used it, then I guess some insight here is that you get like a really good kind of minute-by-minute breakdown of the timeline of exactly what happened at what time. So it really does give you the ability to see what's happened and when. Because you can imagine in some postmortems, people kind of go, oh, I think this happened at this time. But with using the postmortems in PagerDuty, you don't really have any sort of gray area like that. It's there. This is what happened. The timeline is there. So we really don't. When it comes to postmortems, the one kind of key rule that we have is that we don't chastise anybody. You know, this is nobody's individual fault. It's a collective effort to resolve. And we really try to understand maybe why something took so long to resolve. Why was it so complex? Why was it complicated? And pulling those pieces of information out really help us drive improvements for the future as well, especially when it comes to like automating these fixes. Perhaps there was a lot of manual steps. Perhaps that could be automated, and that's what the postmortems really help us kind of identify. We do PIRs for P1s and P2s as a standard, but it doesn't mean that we don't do them for other like P3s and P4s. And we try to do them within 72 hours of the incident being closed. And this really allows the teams to capture information about the incident and the process, the processes that are wrapped around it. And we've just found from experience that the longer that you tend to leave the PIRs, the more people tend to forget because they get on with something else, and you know the mind just carries on. Now, interestingly, we've also found that the PIRs should be hosted really by somebody that had no involvement in the incident whatsoever. That probably sounds not the most obvious thing, but you find that the person who hosts these PIRs that don't have any involvement are a little bit more neutral. They don't lean either way of what happened, and they really do start to ask questions if there are any gaps, and really start to challenge people if the answers or the context isn't clear enough. So yeah, we do this to extract as much detail as we can, really. And yeah, we mainly found that the PIRs before were just it just lacked a little bit of context. And when you've got somebody who might be new to the business that comes in and has a look at these PIRs to get an understanding of, I guess, how the land sort of lays a little bit, the context that's there is really important to anybody in the business. So yeah, that's kind of how we do it. And I guess to add, doing post-incident reviews, don't necessarily think that you have to do them for P1s and P2s only. Actually doing them for P3s and P4s is actually really valuable too. You'll find and learn so much from doing them and practicing them, and absolutely sort of owning the PIR process. You become so good at it and you'll get so much more value out of the more of them that you do.
Thanks. Those are some really valuable insights, especially around fostering a blameless culture with post-incident reviews and trying to get these post-incident reviews done as quickly as possible, because the key seems to be getting as much detail as possible to ensure that your organization moves from a point where it's reactive to preventative, as BT is, where you can almost mitigate issues before they happen because you're aware of the details surrounding these incidents. And I think that's obviously the value of even doing it for P3s and P4s. It helps paint that broader picture. I think we're going to switch into your conversation from outage readiness to digital operational resiliency. Nick, this might be a good time for you to present the solution if you're able,
Sure.
And then we can carry on with the conversation.
Yeah, I'm able.
Great.
ran into recovery mode and ran an extension cord down here, so I'm good. Sorry about that. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide here, I can jump right to demo. I'll stay out of slides for the most part, but really this is the key theme of why. And Chris, it sounds like you're farther down the road, like you're starting to make things happen here. And you're speaking our language, right? You're speaking about learning from P3s, P4s. Like it's not always just the big issues that we learn from. I mean, the fact is we're not spending enough time collectively building resilience. And a lot of times it's because the business doesn't appreciate that value. And so those learnings, that what you're talking about surfacing, what you're talking about breaking down into the business's languages is crucially important. That's what PagerDuty can help with our post-incident review process, right? So at the end of the day, incident resolutions are unacceptably long across the board, just due to noise and lack of real-time insights and manual processes. That's what it really boils down to, and that's what PagerDuty can help you alleviate. So if you want to, I'll do the screen share. If you want to stop the share, I can show a little bit of this in PagerDuty. One second here, let me move some things around. Oops, sorry.
Remember, while Nick is setting up the demo for you, at any time you can use the Q&A box to drop your questions to Tesh, to Chris, to Nick. And also if you're tuning in on LinkedIn, leave your comments there.
Yeah, great. So we talked about noise. Like that's a lot of the times is just getting the right person to leverage a system of action like PagerDuty to pinpoint the exact person you need at a point in time, whether that's 3 a.m., whether that's 3 p.m., it doesn't matter. We have a response team that's capable and ready and standing by to solve these problems. We just need to get it into their hands, right? So PagerDuty is obviously really good at that from a noise reduction perspective. And what I'm showing you here is I fired in, as I started this off, just a synthetic alert storm, like simulate something bad happening in your environment. And we get events from all kinds of observability tools, right? Pages and pages of events here in PagerDuty. And my point on the first, pass of this noise reduction technique is you've had pages of events, but across all teams, we've collapsed into 10 incidents, right? That's a much more manageable number. Some of them are already flagged with a priority. We kind of get an indication of what we should work on. But me as just an individual, if I just got a filter looking at my teams, what's the work in front of me, my pinpointed response or stuff that I have purview into taking care of, that's a much even a narrower view so we can take action right away, right? So let's just, for sake of this demo, I'm gonna be quick on this, is talk about like something on our website authentication mechanism, having failed customer logins, right? So this came into my team. Right now it's actually assigned to Sage, but we see, over here, it's going to escalate in 13 minutes because PagerDuty knows, there's a team here that can handle website authentication issues. This is our front line of route events for this, to this team. But let's say, for sake of argument, I got eyes on glass, I got cycles, I just finished something else up. I'll go ahead and acknowledge this incident and actually see it coming through on PagerDuty here. So now that I'm going to work, right, we can start to see what's the initial view that I get just as a responder coming into this blind. I've acknowledged it on my phone or in Slack or Teams or ServiceNow, whatever. First thing that we want to notice is we've automatically linked outbound to whatever our system of record is. Is it ServiceNow? Is it Jira? Is it something else? But PagerDuty can kind of stitch those things together. So it doesn't matter what the work surface is. It doesn't matter where my user population is. We're just taking care of this problem, right? So as I evaluate this, what is the problem? Well, I know failed customer logins, right? But what's the first thing we often ask when an incident occurs? What's changed, right? What's changed recently? And we can bring these events in from your source of truth for change into PagerDuty. So we know, or our responders know, at second 0, when they get an incident assigned to them, what's changed in the environment. I can link into this, go view the details in whatever system that is, your Jenkins, your GitHub, your GitLab, whatever it is, right? The second thing I'll point out to you all, just because I'm here, is in the notes field here in PagerDuty, we actually see some output of a log, right? And it's because in the past, we've worked on these incidents and realized we reference this log a lot. And a lot of times when we have an issue, there are errors in the log, right? And so rather than that being step 9 of my run book that I eventually get to, this is just here for me, right? Right when I logged into the system, as soon as I acknowledge the incident, boom, here's my log output. And again, links into those systems if I want to go, drive into that further, right? We'll talk about automation as we continue, but that's like the first level. Like I said, as a team that handles website authentication issues, part of our learnings in the past is go fetch this log, put it right in the incident from second 0, right? But further down, we see like the alerts tab. I actually, in PagerDuty, this is part of that noise reduction story, is, pages and pages of alerts collapsed into far fewer incidents, and this is how we do it, right? Grouping alerts together. We can spend an hour talking about all the power of alert grouping. It's evolved in our platform for years. It's a great capability inside of PagerDuty, but the idea is, doesn't matter the source, we can group things together that belong together. And our algorithm for learning how to group things together only gets better as you use it more, right? The more action you take in PagerDuty, the more time you spend resolving incidents in PagerDuty, the better this grouping intelligence will get. Okay, so that's the first side. That's the triage phase of like, okay, what am I seeing in this incident? Okay, well, I got errors in my log. I know when there's errors in the log that we really should flag this thing as a Sev2. This is a problem. Our people can't log into this at all. But the moment that I flagged this Sev2, and we are glad to hear Chris is taking advantage of this in PagerDuty, is we've conditionally kicked off an incident workflow that will run a series of steps every time we flag something as a Sev2, right? That's an indicator that, when we flag a Sev2, we know we need to build our response team, right? We bring in an incident commander, we bring in somebody, for example, to be our communication liaison and talk with our customers, talk with our internal stakeholders, whatever that is, while I and the technical team get on with resolving this incident, fixing it, right? So when I flagged this as a Sev2, you might have saw the first thing that PagerDuty did was add this conference bridge, right? We need a place to collaborate. The second thing we did was add all those responders. The third thing we did, and crucially important, is we started informing our stakeholders via status updates, right? We can populate this data on status dashboards. We can put it, in a lot of different places, in your Teams channels, in your Slack channels, wherever it makes sense, wherever people are going to hear it. But we get an initial team or teams of folks. So in my case, it's about 50 people that are now subscribed and tuned in to the incident we're working on. And they've gotten that initial update that says, hey, we identified an issue. Don't quite know what it is yet, but the team is, we're working on it, right? As well as the automatic impact of business services. So if I talk about stakeholder communication, subscriptions even further, again, we can talk about that later. But the idea is for each one of these business services, I've probably got an audience of folks that cares about it, right? And so by using something like PagerDuty to know, to let you, leverage the idea of, services have dependencies, right? And they all ultimately impact business services. PagerDuty kind of automatically can make sure that those folks have the info they need, that there's an impact, to their service right now. All right, so the idea here is conditionally, based on me flagging a Sev2, I was able to kick off a series of steps so we're consistent, right? All the things that we need to do for every Sev2 that our business impacts. Now, if I flag it as a Sev1, it might even have more updates, right? It might impact more services. It might include more stakeholders, et cetera, right? But the other thing, and I kind of skipped over it in the triage phase, it's important for everybody to understand is, PagerDuty can help you leverage your past right when I'm doing incident response, right? So have I seen this incident before? Give me some quick stats about it. Is it a quick incident? Is it something that usually drags on for a couple hours? Give me a visual heat map of it, right? I don't do a lot of demos on Saturdays and Sundays, so Saturdays and Sundays don't have any incidents. That's great. But what PagerDuty can also do is if I am one of those workers that's kind of zoomed all the way into my little corner of the world that I'm really, really good at, PagerDuty can help me zoom out and say, okay, I know you're experiencing an incident. You got errors in your logs. We see that, but help me take a step back and look across the business and what else is impacted, right? And so we see we've got other people in incident response. We've got other technical services that are impacted, and we've got a mechanism here to help us feed that algorithm as well. All right. All right, so the next thing that we might want to do, how the heck do we fix it? Right now we've identified that there are errors. We've assembled our response team. We've got subject matter experts on. Maybe we're in the back end, typing commands into a command line and fixing things. That's all great. Maybe part of after we get through this and our post-incident review, we're going to build those automation routines into buttons that I can access via the PagerDuty UI. I don't have to jump out of UI. Even if I'm in Teams, even if I'm in Slack, even if I'm in ServiceNow, I don't have to jump out of that UI to go interact with the system and do an action. right? And so we can codify that into PagerDuty. Like this one here that's called fetch last 10 lines of the log, that's the one I told it to run automatically. But if I wanted to go gather disk statistics or something simple against that same host that we noticed impact against, it's just a button here for me in PagerDuty, and then a note will eventually flow through here as soon as that job actually completes. So here's my, oops, all right, scroll to the top. Here's my disk statistics that I executed, right? And to Chris's point, it's important for us during incident response to actually log what we're doing, who's taking action and when. And so there's kind of two pieces here of the audit trail that I'll point out to you. First off is that automations actions log. So anything that we have codified into PagerDuty that we're referencing and running automation against your systems, we're going to stitch that together here in the automation action log. So you see the fetch lines happened at the incident creation. And then we see that Nick executed one here at 11:30. Right. And so we can make sure that those jobs ran successful. If they didn't, we can go fix that, whatever the case may be. And then the second thing here is the incident timeline that encompasses those automation actions, but it's also literally everything else that happens in the incident. Every time we try to, loop in another responder, or PagerDuty sends me a text message and asks for my response, we're going to log that in this non-editable by design PagerDuty timeline so that you can reference that and use that as a data source later. Okay, so eventually we resolve this incident. We push, we push a fix. Maybe we have an automation routine for that. Maybe we don't. Maybe we need to codify that later. And that's where the jelly post-incident review process comes in. So let's, I need to move my Zoom bar to resolve this incident. Let's just say this incident became resolved. Usually that comes in from monitoring, saying it went back from red to green, right? So usually the incident becomes resolved automatically. And then we give you the option here to create our post-incident reviews directly from that incident itself. We kind of jumpstart that process, right? And just for sake of time, I wanted to show you all what a completed post-incident review might look like, right? The idea here is, we can give it a description. We obviously have the start and end time and when we last brought data in, but we can summarize this for our folks. We can see our key players. We can see our data sources. So in this case, we brought in some chatter from various Slack channels, right, that we were collaborating in. And all of that data that we import allows us to build this beautiful narrative, right? How did we detect it? How did we diagnose it? How did we fix it? And then what are key moments along the way, right? All of this is stuff that we use to get better over time, not just P1s and P2, like Chris said. This can happen, something that we see 3 times in a month, that's worth automating and fixing. So let's dig in, right? But the idea here is we can, summarize each one of these key moments. We build this narrative out, and then we can, push that and publish this across the business, whoever needs to see it. We measure our people, like who worked on this. 6 folks in this case, only, one of them was not even on call, but we had to loop them in to fix something for us, right? So the idea here is then we keep a hold of our people, make sure we're not burning people out, make sure that people aren't getting contacted too often overnight. There's some analytics and things in PagerDuty as well for like who's actually receiving notifications and when. We keep an eye on it in that space too. But this is in the post-incident review process, right? And then if there are any key takeaways, right, we can summarize those up. From a leadership perspective, we can start to look for themes. What keeps coming up over and over again? Where is it worth investing here? And then action items, right? If we need to publish some tasks out to Jira or elsewhere. Some bugs that need fixed, some load balancers that need expanded, whatever the case may be, we can track those action items directly from here. So I'm going to pause there. I'm not monitoring the chat. So if we have any questions or anything we need to address or anybody want to chime in, feel free.
Hi, yes, Nick. Actually, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. Tell me, do you have access to it? Can you see, or should I just I can read it out loud?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think I probably do. I just don't know where it's at. So oh, here it is. Q&A.
Yeah.
I got it.
No worries. Wait, we can start, but so Subramania is asking, can it be said that PagerDuty is similar to ITSM tool?
Can it be said that PD is similar to an ITSM? Well, in some regards, right? From absorbing work and tracking work and assigning work, sure, yes. There's things that PagerDuty doesn't do that ITSM does, like asset tracking, stuff like that. CMDB necessarily. PagerDuty is more of a service-oriented architecture and a platform for real-time work. That's where I would say there's a little bit of a blurry line.
All right. And then this is more in a broader question, not directly related to the demo, but Kadisha is asking, what are some of PagerDuty goals for 2025 for product development in target markets? I can say for now that we have a big fall release coming up. So definitely we'll have sneak peeks there of what the Prod Dev team is cooking for you. So stay tuned for the fall release. I don't know if you guys have any more on that theme to share.
I would echo that, Zinda. Like we have the end of the year for PagerDuty is an exciting time. We have the fall release coming up. We have AWS reInvent coming up, where we'll have a pretty big presence and probably some announcements coming around that. So I would say stay tuned in that space. But the short term for us is helping people get better.
Right. Thanks, Nick. And then the last one, I'm not really familiar with the acronym here, but how PagerDuty is different from RPA?
I assume that means like RPA is robotic process automation. So there's other platforms on the market that kind of address that specifically. Think of PagerDuty and think of specifically runbook automation by PagerDuty as an orchestration layer for automation, right? So from PagerDuty's perspective, we don't care if your automation lives within Ansible, lives within Python scripts or PowerShell scripts that live internally. We need a layer to orchestrate access to those, to delegate that safe execution, to bring that the ability to execute that directly to people's fingertips during incident response, and put some control and some security around that. So think of PagerDuty more as an orchestration layer on that. And the very next webinar that you announced at the beginning of this call, we'll double click directly into that. That's our next talk track for sure.
Good. Yeah. Thanks for the preview. Definitely. So it's in 2 weeks for now. We'll be talking more about runbook automation in the next demo roundup, September the 26th, same time as now. Yeah, so we have other questions coming up. Nick, are you over with the demo? Would you like to show any more capabilities, features, you name it?
No, I'm done with what I plan to show today, right? I intentionally, I'm supposed to go first, but was intentionally wanted to be super high level, right? So you kind of show some capabilities, but if anybody wants to double click, reach out to me, reach out to the dozens of other people here at PagerDuty that would be thrilled to walk you through it in detail. Yeah, I'm happy to double click on anything anybody like at any time.
Okay. Good. So since we still have some time, we have 2 more questions in the Q&A. So let me start with this. PagerDuty available in AWS, Azure, and on-prem version?
Good question. So PagerDuty is a SaaS application that is hosted in AWS. So if you want access to the PagerDuty incident response platform, that's a SaaS offering. For runbook automation and our automation tools, we do offer an on-premise version of that for folks in certain cases, but the vast majority is SaaS in that space as well.
All right. So I know that we still have one more section, and actually I know that Tesh has some questions. So I'll go over to you and Chris, so can continue the conversation.
Sure.
Thanks for showing us what PagerDuty can do, Nick, to help with digital operational resiliency. And actually, talking about that, it'd be great, Chris, if we can just have you answer a few more questions around that. It'd be great for our audience to understand, how do you adapt your resilience strategy today to new digital threats and challenges?
So in BT, we've got numerous teams, as you can probably imagine, given the size that BT is. And they look at each of these aspects in such fine detail. And we are set up in a way where we can adapt to threats and challenges really quickly. So I guess like an example, like is the team that I'm part of. We work with all of our development teams. And then we have like quarterly sessions with each of the development teams. So each individual development team every quarter. And we evaluate how well our teams conform to these best practices and principles in the SRE, continuous integration, and security spaces. And we kind of like measure how our teams are performing. We ask them like a set of questions, and we have a set number of questions around SRE, a set number around security, and a set number around CI/CD. And within our team, we have people that specialize in each of these areas. So we have some people in security, some people in CI/CD, and some people in SRE. I sit in the more of the SRE space. But what we do is we talk to our development teams, and we, for example, would say, you know, blameless postmortems, for example, how do you do these? And then we talk through what a good postmortem looks like and ask questions around, you know, basically, are you ticking all these boxes? Are you doing all these things that conform to best practice? If the answer is, you know, we're doing some of them, then that's okay. You'll get a certain score for that. So the system might say, well, you know, that's sort of 2 out of 5 kind of thing. And then once we've asked all of these questions, we bundle up in a big score at the end. And then quarter upon quarter, we'll come back again and ask the same questions to the teams and talk about them, each of those best practices in depth. And then we can, after the quarterly review, after the one we've just done, for example, you can see whether these scores are going up or not. If the scores are sort of stagnant, then maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm not supporting that team enough. Maybe they're not getting the time that they need and deserve to be able to conform to these best practices. Maybe there's more workshops that we need to do to make sure that they've got the skills that they need to be able to do these things as well. So yeah, for us, really, it's about making sure that everybody is responsible for security, digital threats, and resiliency, but you've got to give people the tools and the skills to be able to do that.
Definitely, and as you say, it's important to track how those initiatives are being adopted across your business as well, and how successfully quarter on quarter those gaps are being filled and security is being reviewed. Moving on to some of your best incident management practices, how do you ensure rapid detection, response, and resolution to incidents today?
So, sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well.
Oh, sorry. How do you ensure rapid detection, response, and resolution to your incidents today?
Sure. Sorry, I couldn't hear that. So we pretty much fall in line with PagerDuty's best practice when it comes to that, to be honest, which ensures that our engineers have correct, like up-to-date details in PagerDuty, as well as multiple contact methods as well. It's no use having somebody on call if all you have is their email address. You need, you know, mobile numbers for SMS and phone calls, Slack connections and things like that. So we follow the best practice that's provided by PagerDuty to make sure that not only that we have their contact details up to date, but also that there are healthy gaps in between each of those contact methods as well. We spent a lot of time when we set PagerDuty up making sure that these escalation policies were really well thought out, and making sure that there's enough of an opportunity for an engineer to have the time to acknowledge an incident as well. So we use Dynatrace for the core of our monitoring as well. That's our go-to tool. And we have some rules set up in certain spaces that tell us if things are starting to head in a slightly negative direction. So that allows us to also setting things up like SLOs, and SLOs really help us detect things before things go really bad, before potentially sometimes, and most of the time, before customers see it. And that allows us to go from being kind of like reactive into a more proactive approach. We can use automation to kind of fix these issues before they become actual widespread incidents. And in terms of like resolution that you asked about, and the aim is to keep these as low as possible, but we want our engineers to feel like they've got the space to breathe, to investigate and resolve issues without feeling like they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders, really. To really let our engineers do what they do best, which is having the support of the tribes and product owners and everybody behind them. You know, they are here for a very good reason, because they're very good at what they do, and that's what we like, to make sure that's how they feel when it comes to managing incidents.
And what strategies do you use to prioritize these incidents and allocate resources effectively?
Yeah, so for the most part, we take this from Dynatrace, actually. They lead with this a little bit. So when it comes to prioritization, so we have like P1s for like availability related issues. So your application's not available, you know, customers can't reach it, that kind of thing. Like P2s more for like errors, maybe 503s, that kind of thing. And you can probably see, as I mentioned this, you know, if you've got 503s, then there's a chance that you can't probably reach the application as well. So, you know, that blends kind of into a P1 that could go into a P1 depending on how severe the errors are. P3s we kind of keep for performance related issues. So yeah, there's that. And P4s mainly for any infrastructure or services that we have that might be restricted around CPU or memory issues and that kind of thing. And you can probably see there's a chain there. So, you know, if you have CPU spike, for example, then you may see that that might lead into a performance problem. And performance problems could be attributed to errors. And if you see errors, then that's likely to affect your availability. So you see there's a nice trend there. And we use the service routes within PagerDuty. You know, for some teams that want to do something that's just slightly a little bit different, you know, we do have global rules. So when incidents come in, you know, most incidents get treated in the same way, and that's how they're prioritized. But some teams that might look after authentication, login endpoints, that kind of thing, they have service routes which allows them to kind of override how that's set up. So instead of it being a P2 for some errors on an authentication API, they instead can overrule that and say, no, for us, that's going to impact customers from being able to log into the site. So that's a P1 for me. That's almost like an availability issue for them. So we can use that. So we're trying to work towards automation, resolving any out of hours issues, and dealing with problems kind of into the core working hours, I guess. So that's kind of, I was speaking to somebody at PagerDuty yesterday, Justin, who's on, I think, the next webinar. We were talking about how we would really like to surface, you know, these repetitive issues that automation does fix. So it's great that automation fixes something, but you know what you really want to do in your core hours, now everything's back stable overnight, is you want to actually look at what these common problems are and actually put fixes in for them.
And speaking of automation, I think it's great to have automation take care of those manual steps and even down to diagnostics and remediation. But I know that there are concerns, I think, in every aspect when we automate something, whether it's incident resolution or our personal lives. How do you balance the human oversight in incident management?
I can fully appreciate that it can feel difficult to let go of a human physically looking at something and investigating a problem and resolving it. And I think as an engineer, I think you do get a sense of pride of finding what the problem is and solving it. I get that completely. I really like the idea of having automation providing engineers with as much useful and relevant information, so that if an engineer does need to investigate, time is spent on the actual issue. It's not spent digging around looking for various different vendors, third parties that we use, especially when you a company the size of BT, there could be hundreds, could be thousands of vendors. You just don't have the time when you're dealing with high priority problems to go around looking. So this is where automation really comes in. So like one of the very first scripts that I think I wrote in process automation was, go to our cloud provider and tell us, are there any issues in any of the regions or with any of the areas around the globe that our infrastructure might be deployed in. So that's kind of what we're doing, surfacing that for our engineers. So yeah, it's just a small example of how we can shift our engineers' focus into the issue, I guess, that's directly in front of them.
And you mentioned thousands of vendors, and obviously BT has millions of customers as well in the UK. How do you manage the process of communicating to stakeholders, whether they be internal, external, or your partners, effectively during an incident or a major outage?
Yeah, before PagerDuty, it was very difficult actually, because you don't know when the right time is to communicate out to, and even who to communicate out to. Sometimes you've got a lot of people shouting in lots of different directions, asking you for updates. So we just simply use this status update feature, which I think Nick showed earlier as well within PagerDuty. We've got business services set up that map all the way down to kind of like microservice level. And within business services, we've got product owners and various, I guess, people within the business who have an interest in particular areas of around BT. And they can obviously subscribe to these business services, so that when we do send these status updates out, actually the people who are interested and are only interested in those particular services, they know straight away. And we use the internal status pages for that as well. So for some people, they might just think, well, what's going on? I've not had an update for a while. They can always just go and check there, just in case they've missed anything. Just have a look on the service status page. That's where the latest update is anyway. So we've got security teams that look at sort of things like, I guess, in AWS around guard duty alerts and things like that. They all come through into PagerDuty. So again, we can take action on them really quickly. And we do have some incident workflows within PagerDuty that will automatically send these status updates as well. We talked about incident workflows earlier, didn't we? And as part of that, you can, when the status, I guess, changes, you can send different status updates depending on different factors. And, that just takes the pain out of it. If I don't necessarily, as an engineer, have to think about what I'm sending and who to, that's all done for me, then that's great. I can focus on the most important thing in my engineer's mind, which is getting everything back online for our customers.
That's great. Thanks so much, Chris, for sharing everything about BT's incident management process, from stakeholder communication to incident workflows and how they help with both the automation of manual tasks during an incident, but also remediation and diagnostics, and about how you prioritize incidents and the learning and prevention with your post-mortem process. Really appreciate you sharing these valuable insights with us. Is there anything else, any other advice that you have for everyone listening around digital operational resiliency today?
I think my advice, just from my experience, is you know, let the engineers have the time and the space to think about what is causing the incident, really. And using PagerDuty, genuinely, it can really help, especially with automation. So, you know, having the right tools in place and the processes, it's all kind of baked into PagerDuty. So it really simplifies things, allows engineers to really focus, and even when it comes to automation, fix things as well. So yeah, the right tools, making sure they've got the right space and the business support behind them, really.
That's great. I can tell that it's really important for you to build this strong culture within BT where your engineers feel supported and able to take on incidents and resolve them as quickly as possible. And you obviously give them everything they need. And really appreciate our conversation today. And thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Nick, so much for that presentation.
Unfortunately, the time is up, but we had a lot of insightful conversations. It doesn't need to stop here, you know, so you can go to PagerDuty Commons, PagerDuty community, and continue the conversation there, share, learn, and let's talk about resiliency. Share how you're tackling this in your organization, share some tips and tricks. And also, I hope to see you all in the next demo roundup on automation standardization, September 26th. And we had one question that we're not able to reply, but for that, how you can compare PagerDuty and pick it over ServiceNow. Why don't you start a free trial? So we have the link here. You can use the product for 14 days. You can contact sales folks, and then you can see what PagerDuty can do. Thank you all. That was.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tesh and Nick. And I'll see you the next demo roundup.